The Incredibles is one of my favorite superhero movies of all time. The second one's cool too. And my favorite character in those films is easily the one and only Frozone. So today I figured I'd do a fun video and do another ranking video, this time ranking villains by their chances of beating Frozone. This will be based entirely on what I know about the characters and what I think would happen. But before we get started, let's go over the tiers. No chance. They don't really pose much of a threat. Frozone tears that ass up pretty quickly and easily. A few sweat drops. They were holding their own for a little minute, but in the end, Frozone gets the job done. Bit of a scrap. It's a proper fight that could go for a little while. It could be a bloodbath even. It could be like a Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald kind of fight, and if you know that fight, you know what I'm talking about. They could beat Frozone. In some situations, you might say they would win, and in other situations, Frozone might win. I can't really say for sure. They'd beat Frozone. Pretty self-explanatory. Now, with that out of the way, let's get up in this. Patrick Bateman. If you don't know who Patrick Bateman is, he's a narcissistic serial killer with more than a few screws loose. But he doesn't have any powers, so it would be pretty hard for him to get close to Frozone. Patrick's victims are usually women or people who know him and don't suspect anything, so Bateman is able to catch them off guard and chop them up. So I don't think there's a scenario where Patrick could lure Frozone in without getting blasted into an icicle, so I'm going to put Patrick Bateman in no chance. I think even if Frozone did come over to Bateman's for a drink, he would just smell the psycho off of him, and if Bateman tried anything stupid, he'd just get turned into ice without ever even getting a chance to kill Frozone. Deathstroke. If Deathstroke was hired to take out Frozone, I think it'd probably be wraps for him. Deathstroke wouldn't be stupid enough to get into a range where Frozone could freeze him. I think Slade would keep his distance and just snipe him from afar. If it was a closer range fight, I think Frozone would be able to freeze him into an ice cube, not because he's the better fighter, but because all it takes is one ice blast from a distance to freeze him over. Frozone's actually pretty powerful and he could probably freeze over an entire small city if he wanted. But I think Deathstroke keeps his distance and just smokes him with a sniper, so I'm going to put Deathstroke in they'd beat Frozone. Green Goblin. Now if Green Goblin busts these out, it's over. There's nothing he could do. But he only used those things, I think, one time, and they've never been seen again, so I'm just going to assume he's out of stock. Now, if Big Dick Defoe came after Frozone just like he did Spider-Man, I think Frozone would be able to blast him off of his glider. We saw in Incredibles 2, when he blasts you, you go flying like 30 feet and then freeze over, so I think he could blast Goblin off of his glider, but would he then be able to freeze him and lock him away? I think so. Even if Green Goblin gets back up and starts launching pumpkin bombs, Frozone has lethal aim with the shits and could probably freeze them all mid-air before they ever blow up. So I'm going to put Green Goblin in a few sweat drops. Hold on, let me explain. I think Frozone would be able to blast him off of his glider and then keep his distance and freeze him up before Green Goblin could do anything. Green Goblin is strong, but I think Frozone could keep him on ice until they get him behind bars. So that's how I think it would play out. Darth Vader. Let's be honest, Darth Vader would absolutely murk Frozone. There's really nothing Frozone would be able to do. Before he can even try to freeze him, Vader would have him by the balls while using the Force. So I'm going to put Darth Vader in they'd beat Frozone. The Joker. Now, the Joker by himself isn't going to do much. He'd get turned into an icicle real quick, but I could see him hiring some muscle to kidnap Frozone's wife, and then use his wife to lure Frozone in. Now, I could say Frozone could just call in the Incredibles and they could all just fuck up Joker and whoever he has with him. But I want this to be just about Frozone. When Frozone gets to the warehouse or wherever Joker would be holding his wife, he's going to be pissed and turn that whole place into a winter wonderland while he's trying to save his wife. So I'm going to put Joker in a bit of a scrap. I think this would play out like some epic John Wick nightclub or warehouse fight scene where Frozone comes in and just starts murking people, but I'm not 100% sure he'd come out on top because Joker probably has some disgusting backup plan, but either way, the fight would be epic. So I'm going to keep Joker in a bit of a scrap. Captain Cold. I'm gonna be honest, I don't care that he was working the Flash. That shit's just bad writing.
What?
Are you serious?
Frozone doesn't need a freeze gun, and he's just significantly better and would fuck Captain Cold up. So yeah, he's going in no chance. Omni-Man. Now this seems pretty obvious. Omni-Man is significantly more powerful, and you'd be right. So Omni-Man's going in, they'd beat Frozone. Michael Myers. Michael Myers is a decently durable, strong, and menacing killer, but he walks slow as dick, and he's only fought regular humans. And in that trash final Halloween movie, he got beat up by some kid in the sewers, so yeah, I think Frozone ends him pretty easily. Michael's only chance that he has is to sneak up on Frozone while he sleeps, but I'm assuming they keep the doors locked so he'd hear Michael breaking in and he could just freeze him over and call it a day. So I'm going to have to put Michael Myers in no chance. I really don't care that he's strong in a horror film. Frozone would only need to blast him once for it to be over with. The Winter Soldier. In Captain America the Winter Soldier, we saw Bucky snipe Fury from a distance, and similar to what I said about Deathstroke, I think Bucky would do something similar. He would probably smoke Frozone from a distance without him ever knowing he was being hunted. So I'm going to put the Winter Soldier and they'd beat Frozone. Obviously, if this was close range, it'd be a better fight, but if I had to bet, I'd say Winter Soldier would just be creeping in the shadows for the kill, so he's going to keep his distance. Ajax. Ajax has increased strength and I think durability, but his big thing is that he doesn't feel pain. But that's not going to help when he gets frozen over and shattered into 1,000 pieces, so I think Frozone would be able to ice him up before he gets in a range to do anything. And you might be thinking, well, wouldn't he be able to snipe Frozone from a distance? I never once saw him attempt anything like that in Deadpool, and he also seemed like a cocky douche, so he'd probably want Frozone to know who killed him, so he would want it to be a close range fight. So I'm going to put Ajax in a few sweat drops. I think he might be able to evade a few ice blasts, maybe dance around for a little bit, but Frozone would probably keep his distance and ice him up. I would even contemplate putting him in no chance. You know what? Sure. We'll slap him in no chance. It's just him by himself. So Frozone would probably work him. Let's not forget, ice powers are OP. Elsa was not goofing around in the Frozen films, and we saw how powerful she was. And Iceman's an Omega level mutant, so Frozone has to be up there. The only reason Ajax lasted so long in the Deadpool movie was because Deadpool needed him alive. So this might be controversial, but I'm keeping Ajax in no chance. The T-1000. Now the T-1000 is scary, and it put that work on the Terminator, Sarah, and a young John Connor. But we saw it had a weakness when it got froze over. I think Frozone could do the same thing but at a higher level, but the T-1000 could put paws on Frozone just because of his shapeshifting ability. He could shapeshift into Frozone's wife, Bob, or just one of the kids and lure Lucius in to kill him. Shapeshifting is a scary ability, and I think this would really help the T-1000 out. But if Frozone sniffs it out, he smells something's up, he could freeze him over until they get someone to melt him down, but because of the shapeshifting and his ability to come back and just be relentless, I'm going to have to put the T-1000 and they could beat Frozone. It's a possibility. The Reverse Flash. You know I dig ride speedsters. Reverse Flash would see the ice forming in slow motion, and he could run up to Frozone and one-shot him without him ever even knowing what was happening. Or maybe he'd go back in time and just with him just for the fun of it.
It was me, Barry. I jerked you off at super speed so it'd seem like you nutted at just a woman's touch!
But in no situation do I see Frozone winning this, so I'm putting Reverse Flash and they'd beat Frozone. Art the Clown. Art the Clown is essentially immortal and is completely off his gourd, but he doesn't have any other superpowers that I know of, so although he kills everyone in these films, they're just regular people. So I think if he ran up on Frozone, I think Frozone could put him on ice and then just figure something out after that. Maybe while Art's frozen, have somebody launch his ass into space or something, I don't know. But I'm gonna put Art the Clown in no chance. I know some people are probably mad about this, but when you have superpowers and a lick of intellect, 99% of horror villains aren't doing shit to you, so yeah, I'm keeping Art the Clown in no chance. Homelander. Now, as much as people love to hate on Homelander, he is the most powerful soup in his own universe. And there's a lot of powerful soups in that universe, believe it or not. Even if Frozone was able to freeze Homelander, I don't think it would hold him for very long, and one laser blast from Homelander would do the trick, since I don't believe Frozone has any abilities other than his ice powers. So because of this, and the fact that Homelander is just significantly stronger and is basically a lesser version of Superman, and he is not scared to kill, he'll one-shot you from 30 feet away with his laser blasts, so I'm gonna have to put Homelander, and they'd beat Frozone. There's not much Frozone could do in this situation. The girlfriend from Get Out. Frozone is a black man, and so that makes him a target for the people from Get Out. I know Lucius is married, but let's just pretend that he wasn't married and instead he was with Rose. After meeting the family and all that, Lucius, just like Chris in the film, would probably start to notice that things just seem a little off at this place. To get you into the sunken place, he'd have to be initially hypnotized, and I don't know if he would be because unlike Chris, he doesn't have any bad habits like smoking. So the family might just try and forcefully strap him down and hypnotize him, and if that happens, everyone's turning into ice cubes pretty quickly. But let's pretend he does have a bad habit and willingly gets hypnotized and eventually tied up like Chris in the movie. Even with his wrists tied up, he would be able to lift his hand enough to blast the screen so that the noise won't put him into the sunken place. Because if he gets there, he's done for. But then he could freeze the chair and the straps and break out, and it's over after that. He's going around and just smoking everyone involved with that shit with ease. So I'm gonna put Rose in no chance. Chris escaped with no powers, so you better believe Frozone's getting up out of there. Brightburn. Brightburn is an alien who, similar to Superman, is nearly invulnerable, has super strength, laser vision, flight, and enhanced senses, and he is not afraid to kill. Unfortunately for Frozone, all he has is ice powers. There isn't much Lucius could do in this situation. Brightburn is just too strong. Even if Frozone is able to freeze him, it'll just slow him down, maybe. I think Brightburn kills him pretty easily, so I'm gonna have to put him and they'd beat Frozone. Megatron. Now at first this might seem like an easy dub for Megatron, but he can actually be frozen. We saw this in the first Transformers movie. He crash landed into the Arctic. It was frozen over for like a long ass time. So yes, Frozone could freeze him over, but that's a lot harder said than done. He's fast, strong, and will be moving, so he won't freeze over as easily. So I'm putting Megatron, and they could beat Frozone. I honestly don't know for sure who would win. Sam Witwicky was working Megatron through like 3 movies, so maybe Frozone could too, but Megatron's kind of a beast, so I'm gonna have to put him in they could beat Frozone. Red Skull. Red Skull is a super soldier and leader of Hydra. He uses the Tesseract to mass produce lethal weapons and has an army with him. Now, I do think Frozone could put down a good amount of his army, but I really don't think he gets through all of them solo dolo and gets to and defeats Red Skull all on his own. It'll take a lot just to get to Red Skull. I do think he could take Red Skull out if it was just him and Red Skull. You know what I mean? If it's a similar situation like when Cap fought him on the plane, I think Frozone could ice him up and boot him up out the plane. But I don't know if he gets that far. Like I said earlier, he could probably ice over a whole city. I mean, we saw what Elsa did. So I bet Frozone could smoke on a lot of the army, but I think eventually he might get overwhelmed. So I'm putting Red Skull in a bit of a scrap. I don't think he beats Frozone easily, but I also don't think Frozone beats him easily, so I'm putting him right in the middle. The Deep. Despite the Deep being portrayed as a loser and a joke and not much of a threat, he is decently strong and has increased durability alongside his fish powers. We'll just call it fish powers. But the boys work him every time they cross paths and none of them have powers. I highly doubt this fight takes place in the ocean as well, so Deep won't have that advantage. Frozone more than likely put him on ice and then shatter him, or put him on ice and keep him there. Maybe even put him on ice and then just slap him in a big freezer. I know this is kind of repetitive, but that's how Frozone would win. He'd either ice them up and leave them there, or ice them up and shatter them, or ice them up and dispose of them on some Walter White shit. In a 1v1, I don't see a way that Deep could win unless they're in the ocean or he gets the help of the 7, but I'm not taking that into consideration, so I'm going to put Deep in no chance. Just kind of throwing this one in here. World War Z zombies. No, these aren't your average zombies. They're like if the zombies from The Walking Dead did a line of Pablo's Finest while getting injected with Tren. This seems like a tough task at first glance, but Frozone could probably ice over that city that he's in and freeze all the zombies in that area. Because remember, Frozone wouldn't be on the ground, he'd be sliding around up in the air on his ice things, so he'd be out of range and out of harm's way. The World War Z zombies are strong, but I don't think they'd be able to break out of being completely frozen. But all it takes is one zombie to get loose and get him while he's not expecting it, and then boom, he's done for. So although I think he could go to the extreme and send a city into an ice age, he would also need to be watching his 6 every minute until Brad Pitt gets the cure out. So I'm going to put World War Z in a bit of a scrap. It wouldn't be an easy task for Frozone to freeze over every zombie in the city while keeping everyone else alive, but in a zombie apocalypse, you'd be at a huge advantage if you had superpowers, especially ice powers. So I'm going to keep World War Z in a bit of a scrap. Alright ladies and gentlemen, that's my list. Obviously everyone's opinion is different, and by tomorrow my list would probably be different, but this is what it is for now. Let me know in the comments what you guys would change and why, but yeah, that's all I've got for you guys today, so I'll see you in the next one.